Let the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be acceptable to you, O Lord, my rock and my redeemer. Thank you. Some of you might just vaguely remember a couple of weeks ago when I talked about the changes I'd seen in our eating habits over my lifetime. Today we're spoiled for choice. While those of us of an age may remember that we were brought up on a simple diet which relied heavily on vegetables and particularly potatoes. Fish and chips were a luxury and Friday nights were made special by them. Today's reading reminded me about changes I've also seen in our attitude towards hygiene and safety and health. When we were children, we played conkers without safety gloves and safety goggles. We built bogies with pram wheels and hurtled down hills at crazy speeds. We climbed trees and hung ropes to make Tarzan swings. They didn't close the schools when it snowed. Instead, we made lethal slides in the playground and threw snowballs at each other. When the weather was good, we would often play out all day, so it was essential we took supplies of jam sandwiches and a glass pop bottle full of tap water. The sandwiches would be eaten with hands that would turn the bread grey, and the bottles would be full of floaters which would settle as a sediment if we left it standing. Surprisingly, we didn't die as a consequence of this lack of hygiene, or behaviour which today is considered to be too dangerous. When I was about 14 or 15, after school on a Thursday and Friday and all day Saturday, I worked in a supermarket, where after being shown once, I then became the baking specialist. We didn't have fridges in those days, we had cold rooms, where the sides of bacon would hang for days, sometimes even days. And it was my job to take down the side, which was slimy and sweaty and slippery, lie on the bench, remove the ribs, scrape off the maggots, rub the meat with vinegar to take away the bad smell, roll it, it was then ready to slice. And guess what? It tasted great. And to my knowledge, I didn't poison anybody. Today, everything's vacuum packed, hermetically sealed, and never in contact with human hands. And yet we seem to have so many problems with intolerances and dietary aversions and food allergies. Now I have to admit, all of this is my opinion based on my life experience. And I'm sure it doesn't sit too well with modern parents and childcare today. It's our life experiences that develop our core traditions and beliefs. It's what makes us who we are. They define our own behaviour and the way we think other people should behave. And that's what lies behind the gospel passage from Mark that we heard a few minutes ago. As usual, the Pharisees and Jesus were having a difference of opinion. The Pharisees were upset because Jesus and his disciples did not take part in the Jewish hand-washing ritual before they ate. To the Pharisees, Jesus and his disciples had committed a sin. Now we must not think that the Pharisees are completely bad. They were dedicated to obeying and pleasing God, and that desire led to distinctive practices such as kosher food and circumcision. These practices helped to keep them their identity as God's chosen people in a pagan world. Their tradition grew out of a need to keep their identity. And let's be frank, the Pharisees are not the only people who get upset when traditions are not followed. We get upset when people don't follow our traditions, and we sometimes have to part with them, and that's not always easy. It's one of the reasons why in recent years some congregations have shrunk. They've left the Anglican Church. They've not been able to accept changes such as female clergy, alternative services, or the blessing of same-sex unions. To them, the status quo is the only way to go. And I saw ample evidence of it during my time at St. Mary Magdalene in Byker. In Jesus' time, Jewish law was quite detailed. It left room for interpretation and in many cases the Pharisees used their desire to obey God to create rules to clarify the law. Over time, these rules became so hard and fast that they became a surrogate law, that the Jewish leaders regarded as being equal to the Scriptures. They lost sight of the difference between God's laws and their opinions. Jesus said that this was their sin. He did not condemn all tradition. He only condemned those traditions that were elevated to sacred status. When he responded to the Pharisees' question, Jesus went right to the heart of the issue. The Pharisees wanted to hold on to human tradition at all costs, when they should have been more concerned with teaching God's deeper requirement of love, compassion, and justice. God is more concerned with spiritual cleansing and purifying. If our hearts have been purified, our prayers and behaviour will be in line with what God wants. If we act out of good heart, we will know how to behave even if we don't know the exact rules for a particular situation. While a sense of tradition is desirable and necessary at times, the problem occurs when tradition is substituted for true worship or true faith. The Pharisees were more concerned with strict observance of Jewish laws than they were about true faith in God. This effort to be distinct included a rigid observance of rules that the strict observance of rules covered their lack of inward love and devotion. They were concerned about not letting germs and pollution into their bodies, but Jesus said that they and we should be more concerned with what comes from us, from within us. Jesus says it doesn't matter how we eat or drink, they're just externals. If you smoke or drink, it doesn't make you any better or worse than the next person. It might make you less healthy, but it won't make you less pure. There's nothing essentially different between a teetotaler and an alcoholic in God's stand, as far as God's standards are concerned. That's because what matters isn't what goes into you, but what comes from you. It is in you, what is in your heart that matters. In the Gospel reading, Jesus lists 12 vices that to me sum up all of human sinfulness. He says, "For it is from within, from the human heart, that evil intentions come." And then lists that fornication, theft, murder, adultery, avarice, wickedness, deceit, licentiousness, envy, slander, pride, and folly. If anybody can add anything to that, this to make us any worse, I can't think of it. These all come from inside. These are what make us unclean. I suppose Jesus didn't have to add that those that were listening to him needed to do more than just wash their hands to rid themselves of this sort of stain. What was needed was in fact a change of heart. And the only way we can rid ourselves of these sort of evil intentions is to have our hearts renewed. And the only way that can happen is through Jesus' death on the cross and through faith in his name. What we eat and drink can't hurt or defile us. Only what comes from within us can do that. Jesus wants us and his disciples to see that the core issue always comes down to what is in the heart. Ritual external purity is not necessarily the same as genuine internal piety. We are being hypocritical if we vainly honour God with our lips, while our hearts are estranged from him. The source of evil intention is more internal than external. It's more about who we are than any dirty we may want to avoid. Jesus defined true piety as a commitment from the heart, totally dedicated to the service of God and for others. I'm not suggesting that we can't be hurt by what goes into our bodies. There are obvious things like smoke and drugs and pollution and poor diet. And we can also be affected by the environment we live in. But when God looks at us, the first thing he sees is the state of our heart. He doesn't care what we look like on the outside. He has more sympathy and compassion for a poor beggar in rags who has true faith than for a rich person who wears fine clothes but an impure heart. Those who would serve the interests of God can do so by giving expression to joy in their lives. And for those who feel God's love, they have much to offer the hurting and the disconnected in our world.